Happy Thursday, babe. So in this tutorial, I'm going to be showing y'all how to apply acrylic. Learning to apply acrylic is one of the most important things that you can possibly learn in your nail journey. If you cannot learn to apply acrylic correctly, you're going to have a hard time with your work. So we're just going to go ahead and get into the tutorial so that y'all can learn how to correctly do this. In this tutorial, I'm using our acrylic color mauve. I'm going to put it on the screen, and I'm also going to put it in the link in the bio so that y'all can just tap in and use the exact same acrylic that I'm using. It's very much pro and beginner friendly. So if you're a pro nail tech, it's going to work for you. And if you're a beginner, it's going to work for you. Okay, so the very first thing I do is, of course, I dip my brush into the monomer and I wipe it off on the side. And then I come in and I pick up a medium-sized bead and I allow it to polymerize, or meaning that I allow the bead to get shiny, or sometimes I'll come in and drain it on my napkin. So then I place it right in the middle where the nail tip and the natural nail meets. And I fold it using the very tip and the belly of my brush. It depends on what angle of the nail I'm doing. But I fold the bead, meaning that I push it with the tip or the belly of my brush. If y'all can pay attention to how the bead looks, y'all can tell that I'm pushing it. So here goes the video. Y'all can tell that right now I'm tapping it and I fold the opposite side, meaning that I'm pushing the bead up on the nail. And then I come in and tap it. So the biggest tip that I can allow y'all to help y'all is let the acrylic work for you. You don't have to do too much work. So right here, yes, I'm tapping, but I tap very, very lightly. Like the same amount of pressure that you would use touching a newborn baby is what I use touching these beads. It's not to be mushed down, because if you mush it down, it's no longer going to be that thickness that you want. So I'm tapping it all the way down to the free edge, meaning all the way at the bottom of that nail tip. And then I wipe the sides with the belly of my brush. Very gently though. Y'all don't want to ruin the shape. And then I push any excess acrylic up if I need to make that free edge thicker, because you don't want to have a thin free edge, because that can result in your client chipping their nail. So again, I'm just coming in. Now, right now, the acrylic is drying. So I did go in with a little bit more pressure as far as wiping the acrylic down. But any other time you're dealing with the acrylic while it's still super wet, you don't want to be super harsh with it. So right now, I'm going in with the belly of my brush. And I wanted to make sure that I'm maintaining that square shape down there. So I'm just constantly pushing the acrylic up and wiping the sides, and making sure I'm getting the excess acrylic off the bottom with the very tip, like the back end of my brush where the wood is. I'm pretty sure y'all saw me doing that, but I'm maintaining this shape because when we go in and foul, you don't want to have to do too much work. Like right there, that shape looks perfect. So then I move into doing my second bead, and I pick up a medium-sized bead again. Well, I think that bead was too small, so I ended up going back in, but I do pick up a medium-sized bead. Again, I allow it to polymerize, or I dry it on my napkin, and then I place it in zone 2. If you go purchase my Veah's Vault ebook, you will see the zoning of the nails that I created. But right here again, I didn't fold because we're not dealing with the nail tip anymore, but I'm just lightly pushing it up, y'all, closer to that cuticle bead with the tip of my brush, and then I'm tapping. That's literally one of the most important brush strokes that you can learn. And then once I'm done tapping the bead, I swipe it. It's so simple. And once I'm done doing this, I very much move into that third bead. And again, maintaining the shape of that nail is very important. So anytime you do a bead, you want to make sure that you're coming back in and wiping the sides, just in case. Even if the shape looks perfect, I do it just out of habit. So again, we're moving on to this third bead, and I'm going to place it right above, like literally right above that third bead. That second bead, not on the skin, but I'm placing it down with the very tip of my brush. And then as soon as I finish tapping and I bring it down to where I want to wipe, I start swiping. And again, y'all, out of habit, even when the nail looks perfect, I still go in and swipe it down, or maintaining the shape of it. Like y'all see right here, I'm going in with the tip of my brush just to ensure that there's no acrylic on the client's skin and the shape of that nail is perfect. And once you can check all three of those things off, then you can move on to the next nail. And it does take time, but you will get it if you consistently practice. So right now I looked on the side and I could see that there was like a little dip in the nail. And that comes from your bead sizes not being the exact same, or them not being big enough or small enough, whatever the case may be. So once you diagnose that, then you can go back in and fix it. So that's exactly what I'm doing right here. Y'all can see that I did not move on to that second nail because I was not happy with the way it looked. So I'm gonna tell y'all how to fix it. So I placed the bead horizontally this time. You can do it vertically or horizontally depending on the case, and you want to wipe it up and then you want to wipe it down. And that leaves the middle of that bead still being super thick, but the top and the bottom being thinner because you swiped it down. So then again, y'all, I'm doing the same exact thing that I do every time I lay a bead. I'm maintaining that shape and I'm making sure that it's thin. And now when you look on the side, the nail is completely straight. And again, I talk about that in my ebook. There are certain ways that a nail should and should not look when a bead is laid. Now that I've confirmed that the nail is perfectly fine, I can move on to my second nail. So I was about to do it, y'all, and then I realized it was some lint on here, so that's why I'm shaking my finger like, no, no, no. So when you notice that there's lint on this natural nail, you want to go ahead and wipe it with some alcohol. If you haven't yet, go ahead and watch our natural nail prepping video because this will all make sense. But yeah, you want to go in with some alcohol and get that nail wiped off before you start applying that acrylic. So now we can finally get started with applying the acrylic on the second nail. Right here, I picked up a medium to large size bead, and I'm going to place it again where the natural nail and the nail tip meet. So right here, I was just trying to show y'all that I'm waiting for it to polymerize instead of draining it on a napkin because there are multiple different ways to do it. So y'all can slowly see the bead become shinier and shinier and shinier. And once it gets to that point, you want to go ahead and place it. So again, this is a perfect example of me literally folding the bead onto the nail bed. And right here is another perfect example of let that acrylic work for you. The acrylic is literally in the perfect position to be brought down. And y'all can see how it's slowly coming down more and more. And all I'm doing is wiping the sides, and I might go in and tap very lightly just to bring it down a little bit faster, because every second that acrylic is exposed to oxygen is drying. Every second that it's in the air is drying. So you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of that wet acrylic. So right here, y'all, again, I'm using the belly of my brush to manipulate the acrylic so that I can get that shape that I want. And I might have to bring it down a little bit more towards the free edge to make sure that the free edge is thick like I did with that second nail. And every nail is a different situation. Each way that you apply acrylic is situational. So right here, I had to brush it down a little bit more to get that square shape that I want. But once I got it, I was able to keep manipulating the bottom of it to make sure that it's that perfect square so that when I go in and file, I won't have to do too much work. And me personally, I don't stop wiping the acrylic until it's dry, basically almost dry. Like right here, the acrylic was about to harden. Like y'all can see how it's shiny compared to that middle finger, but that's only because it's monomer on there and it's literally a fresh bead. So eventually I stopped messing with the bead because I noticed that it wasn't moving no more. And once it's not moving no more, that means that it's dry. The bead is like, sis, I'm done. We're over where it's dry, leave me alone. So once the bead tell me that, I move on to the second one. And this time I picked up a medium-sized bead, just like I did with the other nail. Again, y'all, I allowed the bead to polymerize by allowing it to just sit right there in that oxygen. Because again, every time it's in the oxygen, every second that it's touching the oxygen, it's drying. So once that chemical reaction happens between the monomer and the acrylic powder, that's what happens. It turns shiny. So then I place it right above where I placed that first bead at. And then I'm just tapping just like I did with the first one. So this time the bead was actually big enough for me to use it as a cuticle bead, so I went ahead and pushed it up. And I love when this happens because it just makes it so much easier. I can only use 2 beads. Life is great. So once I bring it down to the point that I want to swipe, I just start swiping, y'all. It's so simple. So this bead, it was a little dry, so I had to work a little bit harder to bring it down, which y'all will see me like brushing way harder, because I don't recommend the whole hard brushing technique. Whatever, if that's how people do it, that's how they do it. But Yahni don't do that, okay? So I brushed very lightly, but your girl made a mistake and I was brushing very hard. And this is a great example of how it should not look. Mistakes are natural, you know what I mean? So when this happens, I go in with that same technique I did the first time. I place the bead right in the middle, or right where it needs to go, and I brush up and I brush down depending on where the mistake I made was. So y'all will see me actively repair this nail, and I'll explain it to y'all more and more as I do it. But like I said, I know for a fact I placed the bead, and see how this time I did it vertical instead of horizontally? Yeah. So I'll go in, I'll brush the bottom of the bead, and then I'll brush the top of the bead. And it's that simple for you to repair the nail. And then once I do this, I look at it from a different angle just to ensure that there's no humps, lumps, or dips, because we don't like those. That's not cute, and it's not supposed to be there. And again, I talk about that more in my ebook. So right here, I go in and I did it one more time because I noticed a very big hump, lump, dip. Any of those three, we don't want it. So again, I brush down or I brush up depending on what the nail needs. It's basically like nail surgery. And because I've been doing this for so long, I knew exactly what that nail needed. But a beginner like yourself who's watching this, you may not have known that, but now you do. And as y'all can see, looking at it from this angle, the nail is perfectly fine. So then once I recognize this and the shape is good, your girl can move on to that pinky nail. And that is exactly what I did. So I showed y'all a different angle just to show y'all that this is very important. You want to make sure that you look at your application from all different angles, because that will tell you if you can move on to your next nail. So once I recognize this and I see that I can move on, that's what I do. So this time I picked up a large bead, because you can do it multiple different ways. You can pick up a medium-sized bead, large-sized bead, whatever you want to do. Just make sure that it's not small, because that's not going to be efficient. So again, I allowed it to polymerize, and this time I placed the bead vertically because on the pinky nail, it's a little bit more narrow, and placing it horizontally is just more work. So I placed it vertically right where the nail tip and the natural nail meet. And then I push up, or quote unquote fold, and then I go in and tap. And I allow gravity to do the work for me. Do not tap super hard. I know I done said that so many times, but that's literally so important. You don't want to go in tapping crazy because you're going to mess your bead up. So I tap very gently, making sure that I'm bringing that acrylic down to the free edge. And just like we did with the other two nails, you want to go in with the belly of your brush and push that acrylic up to make sure that you're making that free edge thick and you're getting that square shape that you want. So I go in with my brush. I'm constantly wiping, constantly swiping the sides just to make sure that that square shape is kept. So now that I've finalized my shape, I move on to the second bead. So I picked up a small to medium sized bead and I placed it in between zone 2 and 3 because that first bead is kind of high, so we don't have that much space to work with anyways. So again, I'm pushing this bead up towards the cuticle, and I would have used this as a cuticle bead, but the pinky was an extra long length, and I tried to avoid doing 2 bead nails for extra long just because you want to make sure that it's fully structured to support that length. So once I was done tapping the bead upwards, I went in at the bottom of the bead and I swiped it down. Once I was done perfecting my shape, I moved on to that third bead, which is the cuticle bead, and I picked up a really tiny bead because we don't need that much acrylic because again the space is very small. Once I place this bead, I zoomed in because I want y'all to see this. So I push it up with the very tip of my brush. I don't get it on the skin. I'm pushing it up with the very tip of my brush. I'm tapping it down to make sure that it's brought down to cover up that second bead. And then once it gets to the point of covering up that second bead, I go in and I wipe it down. And then now the nail literally looks perfect. Now we're going to move on to short application. So with this nail, it's not realistic. It's not as realistic as I would do with the regular client, but I'm going to try to explain it as best as possible. So me personally, I pick up like a small to medium sized bead, and I place it not where the nail tip and the natural nail meets, but right above it, like right in zone 2. Right in the middle of the nail, because it makes your life so much easier. So I go in, I place it. There's no need for folding as much because there's no length on this nail. So I just tap. I'm tapping, and I bring it down towards the free edge. And with short nails, this is the most that you'll have to push the acrylic back up, because having a thicker free edge with short nails is more important than any other length, because you want to make sure that when your client leaves, they're not breaking the corner or cracking their nails. So once I push it back up and the thickness is there, then I'll wipe it down again, and I'll push it with the belly of my brush and wipe the sides. And once all of that excess acrylic is towards the free edge, I'll go in with the wooden part of my brush and I wipe it down. Some people use like a cuticle pusher or scissors. It all depends, but me using the wooden part of my brush is faster for me, so that's what I do. And just like any other shape, you want to make sure that that square shape is maintained, especially for short nails. And again, once my shape is perfected, then I move on to my second bead. So for short nails, you're typically always going to use a small bead. So I picked up a small bead for the cuticle area, and I placed it right in zone 3. Y'all are going to see that in the next couple of seconds. So I placed it down, and I did fold it a little bit just because that bead was kind of wide. But I'm pushing it up towards the cuticle bead just like I did on that pinky with the very tip of my brush. And then I tap it down a little bit, and then I wipe the very bottom of the bead. After doing that, this should be your outcome. If you have any questions, you can DM me via Instagram at Veah's Haus. I'll put my Instagram right here on the screen. And if you want to add something in the comments below, you can go ahead and do that as well. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. And if y'all want to see a video on anything else, just comment and let me know. And I'll see y'all next time. Feeling I never had.